It's a spool of wire, and I'm almost out of it. Can you see the spool of wire? I'm almost out of it.
Okay.
And I've had this spool of wire for like 40 years. I bought it like this it's not a piece of a long time ago, but it's like 40 years of my life is in the wire that's gone. Does that make sense? This is what's left. Does that make
I'm
sense?
sorry to hear that, and sad for you, but you're wearing your Jets hat, and I'm a little concerned right now that you're wearing your Jets hat. I thought that's why you were crying.
Okay, I'm done.
All right. First thing, I'm about to reveal a secret that you gals don't know. Sometimes when you ask us, well, what are we thinking about? We say nothing. 75% of the time, it's actually nothing. But there's a 25% of the time that it's things like that. And we know you won't understand or won't grasp or won't understand the ramification or where we're coming from. So we shut the fuck up and we just say nothing. We put it in the nothing bin because it's nothing. It's actually nothing to you. It's really nothing. It's nothing to fuss about. It's nothing that we really want to talk about. It's nothing that you're going to be able to understand. So technically, we're not lying. It's nothing. Okay? Second thing, he was just trying to open up on some bullshit. 40 years, it's like you gotta have a relationship with certain things, and it's kind of over. It's not so much about the spool of wire. Oh my God, I got a connection with some wire. It's not that. It's not that. It's the realization that 40 years of your life passed. When you just talk about, yo, I'm 40, it's tough to comprehend, but when you remember when you bought that stool, that spool of wire, you remember when you bought it, and you see the little chunks and the bits that you use of it, and when you bought it, it was so big, it was huge, you didn't think it would never end. You think it would never end. That spool would never end, and now, 40 years later, it's about that time to separate, and it's kind of an image of everything. It's an image for this channel, it's an image for this friendship, it's an image for life, it's an image for your living here, your relationship with certain people, all these things that you think and you take for granted last forever, but they don't. All of them good memories that you have, memories don't live like people do, will eventually be gone. And it's hard to materialize or to understand, but he, for once in his life, had that spool of wire in his hand that he remembers when he got it, and now it's coming to an end, and it's in front of him. That's why he's crying. And then when he shared that, you brushed it off. So when shit like that happens, I don't think he's gonna want to necessarily share more stuff.
All right, so I will say, watch the full video because they also do get into the part where, you know, they're kind of explaining what happened and all of that. But what I really want to focus on is this piece of this of the relationship that can go on between a husband and his wife. And first of all, I want to go to Job, right? Job chapter 2:9. And so after they lose their wealth, their livelihood, or their stocks, they lose their children, right? So basically they've lost everything. Even their health starts to degrade. Job's wife says to him, "Are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die." All of these things that are happening to Job, a lot of the people that know him are linking it to some type of sin that he had to have committed, some type of way that he had to have wronged God in order for God to allow all of these crazy things to come into his life. So this is when she's saying, dude, we've lost everything. You clearly did something. Why don't you just curse God and die? Right? That is her response to the entire situation that they're going through at this moment. And this highlights, not in all cases, right? But in a lot of cases, there is a miscommunication, misunderstanding on how men and women deal with situations, right? A lot of women, by and large, they're more comfortable sharing what's going on in their lives, sharing what their problems are. Whereas for us men, it is a lot more difficult to open up. And it's not so much that we don't want to share things, is that it may take way too long to explain why we are feeling the way that we are feeling, right? And by the time you get to explain everything, it may not even come out how you want it to come out. And then it leads to the person not even understanding really what you're going through. And this is what happens with this man, right? He's explaining how the spool of wire that he's had for like 40 plus years, he's really not down, but he's contemplating on like possibly all of the times that he used this, how large it was when he first started, where he's at now, where he is in his life, right? All of the things that he has gone through in life, but he's looking at through the references of the times that he had to use this spool of wire. And, you know, I don't think that the wife's response was like ill-intended. I just think that, like anyone, maybe they wanted to lighten up the situation a little bit. So I think that the critiques that I'm seeing online are like unjustified, but it does highlight, right, that there is a big difference between how men and women communicate. And I will say that for me, in my own personal experience, it's like this as well. And it's not so much that I don't want to share with my wife, but part of it is that I don't want to burden her, right? Bring more problems onto her, because I do feel that part of my job is to limit the amount of things that my family has to go through, right? And that only happens if somebody else is taking the brunt of that, and that means me, right? And so there are things that maybe I don't share with my wife, and it's not because I don't trust her, and I just don't want to burden her. But there are times in my life that I do wish that maybe she would ask me more questions, not the simple like, oh, how are you today? But hey, specific things that she knows that I'm working on, either at work or ministry or whatever, that she would drill down and ask about those specific things, so that maybe I would have more of an opportunity to open up and share those things. And, sometimes it happens and other times it doesn't. But this is just to share that whereas for a woman, you can just say, hey, how was your day? And she will freely open up about everything that went on. For men, we do find it a little bit more difficult, and it may take a little bit more probing, right, from the wife's perspective to be able to get those details. And it's not to say that one way is wrong and one is right. This is just to say that we communicate differently. And I just want to nail down before we go, this moment that this man had, right? 40 years he's had this spool of wire, and he's just contemplating on his life and possibly how finite ultimately our lives are as humans. And Psalms 90, written by Moses, 90:12 says this: teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Now, to give you some perspective on Psalms 90, here there's a few things that go on, right? Moses is talking about, firstly, about God's eternity, right, and how great he is. And then he focuses on how brief, right, the life of a human is. Then he goes into the consequences of our sinful actions and how those display in our lives. And then he seeks also from those things that go on from our lives, we are to draw out that wisdom. And so this entire Psalms is really exploring the idea of not only humanity, but how limited we are in our lifespan. Not only that, how limited we are in our wisdom compared to God's wisdom. And I truly think that, whether this man intended this or not, that is what he is realizing in that moment, right? The brevity of his life, the things that maybe he did right, the things that he did wrong, and where he is at today. And I think that all of us should take this into consideration and maybe take it as a wake-up call to contemplate and to analyze our lives on a more regular basis than maybe we do currently, right? I think that it's towards the end of the year, so it's a perfect opportunity to do that. But, reflect more often on God, on your family, on how you're doing, how you're serving others, things that will bring perspective into your life. And ultimately, maybe when you reflect on your life 40 years from now, it won't be as sad as maybe this man in this moment. Because if throughout your life, you've taken these times to reflect on your life and how you've served people and on God, then maybe when you get to 40 years down the line, you're just reflecting on how good you were able to shepherd this time that God gave you here on earth. Right, guys? Well, this is all that I had for you today. And as always, I just want to remind you that we must persevere. Peace.